The NFL draft has came and went, and hundreds of former college players will now have the opportunity to live out their childhood dreams. Some teams had good drafts, some teams had bad drafts, and that's what we're going to discuss in today's video, is the winners and losers of the 2020 NFL Draft. But before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now let's begin. The first big winner of the draft was the Cleveland Browns. They took arguably the best offensive tackle in the class and didn't have to trade up to get him in Jedrick Wills. Wills will be a day one starter, and there was nobody happier than Baker Mayfield about this selection. He had a sophomore slump, and having good protection in front of him should get him back on track for upcoming year number 3. Their second round pick was a great pick as well in safety Grant Delpit. He didn't have a good last year at LSU, but if he can return to his sophomore form in the NFL, then the Browns will undoubtedly have one of the best secondaries in the NFL, with him, Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, and newly acquired safety Karl Joseph. They drafted tight end Harrison Bryant in the 4th round, who is the Mackey Award winner and continued to give Baker Mayfield weapons. Lastly, they selected wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones late in day 3, who now that he has a quarterback throwing to him, could become a big draft day steal. An A+ draft from the Browns. Now the first big loser of the draft is the Green Bay Packers. The Packers were a game away from the Super Bowl just last season and had no true number 2 receiving option for Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers to throw to. In a class of wide receivers that has been labeled as one of, if not the best wide receiver class ever, they didn't address that position at all. They didn't wait till the 4th or 5th round to maybe get a 3rd round talent. They just simply chose not to address it. When a team with an aging quarterback is just one game away from the Super Bowl, you would think they would do anything within their power to reload and give it their all for one last chance with Aaron Rodgers. However, they did the exact opposite. Not only did they draft Aaron Rodgers' successor with their 1st round pick, they reached for a running back with their 2nd round pick when they have a running back in Aaron Jones who just led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. As if these 2 first picks aren't bad enough, they took a tight end in the 3rd round, and head coach Matt LaFleur said they intend to use Josiah DeGuara in a Kyle Juszczyk role. So that means they spent their first 3 draft picks on a player who will have no contribution in year 1 and probably year 2 for that matter, a backup running back, and a fullback. Now, could Jordan Love eventually become a franchise quarterback for the Packers? Yes, he could, but to expect him to develop the way Aaron Rodgers did is completely asinine, as Rodgers in his prime was a 2-time MVP award winner, a Super Bowl MVP, and had an insane 45-6 touchdown to interception ratio in 2011. To expect anybody, even Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence next year for that matter, to do that is simply unrealistic. As of now, this draft class is horrendous for Green Bay. The next big draft winner is the Detroit Lions. They drafted the best corner prospect since Jalen Ramsey at number 3 overall and Jeff Okudah. He will replace the void Darius Slay left as he was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Okudah will step in and be a day 1 starter, and a good one at that, and in his future should be a multiple-time Pro Bowler. Their 2nd round pick was DeAndre Swift, and they drafted a 1st round talent in Swift. We know the running back position and its limits now with paying a player, but Swift should be a good contributor for the next 4 years and assist Matt Stafford, unlike some of his previous running backs he's had. Stafford in his career has had running backs named Jahvid Best, Joique Bell, and older Reggie Bush, and Theo Riddick, so Swift will undoubtedly be one of the better ones of the bunch. They also added Julian Okwara in the 3rd round and Logan Sternberg in the 4th. I thought they reached on guard Jonah Jackson in the 3rd, but aside from that, this is a really solid class from Detroit. The next big draft loser was the Seattle Seahawks. They selected linebacker Jordan Brooks with their 1st pick, who came off the board much too early. The Seahawks then selected Darrell Taylor in the 2nd, who is already 23 years old. Selecting prospects who are 23 is a little risky, because if they fail to produce in their rookie or 2nd season, then they're more than likely on their way out of the league, as a team would rather draft a player who is 21 or 22 than to throw more money and time on a player who is already in their mid-20s. And a reference for this is Seattle's 2019 1st round pick LJ Collier, who had just 3 tackles in his 24-year-old rookie season. Now, I'm not saying Darrell Taylor will be as bad as Collier was, but it is worth noting that older prospects are more risky. I did like the Damian Lewis pick in the 3rd round, as I think they'll get a starting guard out of him, but is a guard in the 3rd round enough to offset 2 reaches? I don't think so, and that's a big reason I think Seattle did not have a good draft class. The next big winner of the draft was the New York Jets. They drafted Mekhi Becton at 11th overall, and if he reaches his full potential, he will be one of the best tackles in all of football. In the 2nd round, they traded back and drafted a player who had been consistently mocked in the 1st round in wide receiver Denzel Mims. It took them 2 years, but they are finally getting quarterback Sam Darnold some much needed help. They then drafted safety Ashton Davis out of California with their 3rd round pick and had a 5th round steal in corner Bryce Hall. This was general manager Joe Douglas's first draft, and he knocked it out of the park after having a not so great free agency period. To top it off, he signed corner Lamar Jackson as an undrafted free agent. For the first time in a while, it seems like the Jets are genuinely trending in the right direction, and winning the draft will certainly help with that. A great first draft during the Joe Douglas era for the New York Jets. The next big loser of the draft was the Houston Texans, and it has a lot to do with how they started their offseason by trading DeAndre Hopkins. They originally traded their 1st round pick away for Laramie Tunsil, and that's okay, I don't have a problem with that, because he is one of the best left tackles in the game, and it's extremely important to protect franchise quarterback Deshaun Watson. But to trade both DeAndre Hopkins and Jadeveon Clowney in less than a year and not receive a single 1st round pick isn't a good start to the draft. To top it off, they had only 5 selections and maybe 1 long-term starter in Ross Blacklock is a horrible draft class. The Texans should have relieved Bill O'Brien of his duties immediately after making the DeAndre Hopkins trade and certainly after this draft class. I personally think Deshaun Watson should either demand a trade or ask for a minimum of $40 to $45 million per year, because the roster they've assembled around him is never going to win a Super Bowl, and if you're a Texans fan watching this, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to wait a few years to be really competitive again. They could win a division title or 2, but they will get steamrolled in the playoffs by teams like Baltimore and Kansas City. Ross Blacklock is not a bad prospect or player, don't get me wrong, but to have a draft class where he will more than likely be the only long-term starter or player to stay on the roster does not signify a strong draft class. I don't know what was worse, Bill O'Brien's first draft class as a GM or his free agency and trading acquisitions. Another big winner was the Minnesota Vikings. They needed a receiver after trading Stefon Diggs to the Bills, and they had Justin Jefferson fall into their laps at 22 overall. That was an A+ pick alone, and then they traded back from pick 25 to get a corner who was their guy all along in Jeff Gladney. They had been consistently mocked Gladney at 25 and still managed to get him at 31, and day 1 for them was a home run. Day 2 brought more excitement as they drafted an offensive tackle in the 2nd in Ezra Cleveland, who could eventually become a starter and be the successor to Riley Reiff on the left side of the line. In the 3rd round, they took a really solid corner in Cameron Dantzler, who held his own the past few years in the SEC. His 40 time of 4.64 slid him down the board, and the Vikings took full advantage of that, and with corners Mackenzie Alexander, Trey Waynes, and Xavier Rhodes all leaving, they had to address the position early and often, and they did. On day 3, they took a unanimous All-American in James Lynch at defensive tackle, and Kenny Willekes in the 7th round could prove to be one of the big draft day steals. Slick Rick Spielman had an A+ draft. The final draft winner of today's video is the Dallas Cowboys. Their 1st round pick was a home run by every definition, as they had one of the top 3 receivers in the draft fall to them at 17 in CeeDee Lamb. I was a little worried for their draft's sake that with Jerry Jones selecting from his yacht, they would mess up big time, but it was the exact opposite. They selected Trayvon Diggs in the 2nd round, who is a very good corner prospect, as he has the height, weight, and speed to play at the next level. His brother Stefon is a 2-time 1,000-yard wide receiver, and I'm sure Stefon has had many conversations with Trayvon about what wide receivers are looking to do and how to get open, and this should only help him progress him as a corner at the next level. Their 3rd round pick was Neville Gallimore, and he was a good selection as well, a great value pick in the 3rd round. Tyler Biadasz is a good 4th round pick with the retirement of Travis Frederick, and last but not least, their 5th round pick, Bradlee Anae, cannot be talked about enough. He was an absolute steal, and he had no place being on the board that late in the draft. Also, shout out to the Ravens and Broncos, as they had incredible drafts and are also draft winners. Patrick Queen is a perfect Raven, and Jerry Jeudy with Drew Lock and Courtland Sutton, I really can't wait to watch them out in Denver. And that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you're still watching, I appreciate the time out of your day. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Skol Vikes.